Okay, in the absence of, okay, great. Thanks so much, everyone. I won't be reading our competition law statement out, and for those who've been in some of our meetings, I'm sure there's a sigh of relief because it's very useful, but it isn't. So please do note that we are conducting this meeting according to competition law in South Africa, and we will not share sensitive information or agree to exclude or include certain groups of people in our business operations. Very brief overview. So the agenda we have for you today is an overview of extended producer responsibility, 5 to 10 minutes, by Lauren de Kock of WWF's Circular Plastics Economy Program, PETCO's CEO on PETCO's EPR approach, Cherie Scholz. Unfortunately, Mandy Nordia is very sick with bronchitis. So having soldiered through a week of bronchitis, she is now needing to be in bed. So she's kindly offered to present her section next week, Thursday, between 3 and 4 p.m. So please do indicate to me in the chat if you would like to be part of that webinar. And if there's a number of people interested, I will send it to the broader group. Then we have Audrey Spangenberg, CEO for both the Polystyrene Association and the SA Vinyls Association. After this, we'll hold a Q&A session. We can be a little bit less strict with our speakers on their time, and we can allow for a bit more discussion in the Q&A. Please, as you're thinking of questions or comments, post them in the chat box. I will then facilitate a discussion and question time during that Q&A. And let's engage in a respectful and yet a robust way. These are really good issues, and the whole system of EPR is really good to discuss and wrestle through in certain cases. Then we'll have our extended producer responsibility, a presentation by Dumisani Buthelezi, Mulalo Chikochi, and Rishal Suklal from DFF. Apologies, Mulalo and Rishal, I didn't add you this morning onto the slide. I will introduce you later, and then we'll end off with a Q&A session and our thank yous. Maybe coffee vouchers here for us. So thanks very much. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Stop share. And I will now introduce Lauren de Kock. So Lauren de Kock from WWF is the project manager for the Circular Plastics Economy Program at WWF. This program works in 3 pillars: business, policy, cities, and consumers. And they're currently working on a program funded by the Swedish EPA to develop an EPR framework for South Africa with DFF, and this is part of the policy pillar. So Lauren, thank you so much for being here. We invite you to share your screen.
Thank you, Kirsten. Okay, so I'm on unmute. Share screen. You did practice this earlier. So can everyone see my presentation slide? My slide?
Looking good.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Just to say that IUCN is also a project partner in the EPR Framework Development Project. So we all working together with DEP to develop that. And we will be starting with expert interviews to get views from the different stakeholders in South Africa, as well as international experts, specifically with the same context as South Africa and the BRICS countries. So yes, please look out for those emails, and we'll set up interviews with everyone. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so my introduction is a very broad, high-level introduction, and the PROs after my presentation will be going in more detail. What is the setup in South Africa? So let me start. Okay. There we go. And I think it's good to start with the definition of EPR, or extended producer responsibility. This is a policy approach. It could also be a voluntary or a mandatory, where the producers, and I'll get into more detail of actually who the producers are, they need to take responsibility for a product that's put on the market after the consumer has disposed of it. So that's why they call it extended producer responsibility. These activities at end of life include collection, pre-treatment, sorting, recycling, reuse, recovery, etc. So basically these producers are taking responsibility, and they either do that by financial support or financial contributions, or operationally to ensure that the material is taken care of in an environmentally sound manner after it's disposed. Okay, just to go through the goals of the EPR, to touch on the environmental goals, it firstly aims to incentivize producers to produce packaging that is environmentally friendly, that is sustainable, that is circular. And this is also determined by, you know, the materials used as well as the formats. So in South Africa, you know, we have the packaging guideline, or the design for recyclability, and that could be drawn on that in an EPR. It also looks at, besides looking at product packaging design, it also looks at the end of life. So again, is there effective collection and sound treatment, environmentally sound treatment of the waste products at the end of life? And of course, in South Africa, there is this requirement, and if you did see in the draft EPR regulations, that more investment needs to be made into the waste sector. We need job opportunities, we need more contribution to the overall GDP of the country from the sector, because it has been quite neglected up until now. So basically, this is a way that EPR schemes can help to address these issues related to resource consumption and growing waste generation. Just some benefits of EPR. We have environmental, economic, and social benefits. Environmental benefits are quite self-explanatory. So it's to support all the activities at the end of life. It's to boost recycling rates. It's to incentivize reuse. And also higher up in the value chain, you know, can we design packaging that does conform to circular economy? Is it recycled? Can it be reused, etc.? From the economic perspective, all these fees need to be channeled into schemes that ensure that the material does come back into the system. And also very important, which we have experienced recently, is, you know, virgin plastic is more affordable than recycled plastic. So, you know, it's also to level the playing fields there. And of course, job creation and opportunities, which is really it's a priority in South Africa at the moment. From a social perspective, you know, it's internalizing the externalities that we currently are witnessing, and also health risks. So, you know, when waste is burned, I mean, there are health risks. When there is too much waste in the environment, you also have impacts on other economic sectors, such as fishing and tourism. And of course, a big one in this country is, you know, supporting the informal waste sector and integrating them into the system. Okay. Just some basic principles of extended producer responsibility. It's there to level the playing field. So every company that places packaging on the market is obliged to be part of the scheme. They pay a fee, as mentioned, for the end-of-life activities. And these activities include, as mentioned, collecting, recycling, disposing the packaging waste, as well as communications, education awareness. And this, you'll see in the presentations coming up, is that this is what the PROs that are currently there, those are the activities that they are involved in. Okay, just moving to the different kinds of EPR schemes. So you do get individual schemes where the producer pays a fee to a waste management operator who then collects the waste. And that's the simplest form of an EPR. But there are limitations of this individual producer responsibility. The producers, importers must precisely know about the exact distribution of their packaging and how to access it. You know, if you look at the logistical challenges, especially in a country like South Africa and the rural areas, that is very challenging. You know, they can put in practice, these companies can put into practice take back of certain amounts of waste. But again, you know, there is power in the collective, and one brand owner trying to organize and to coordinate all of this, it doesn't really present change at scale. It doesn't scale. So if you look at the second one, collective responsibility, that's more one that is well known, and this is about, you know, everyone, all the producers, importers coming together collectively and setting up a producer responsibility organization. And this organization enables these obliged companies to assume responsibility by combining all their fees and then jointly managing the packaging waste coming from this. So there are many versions of PROs. You get non-profit, which is the current format used for PROs in South Africa. You get for-profit. You also get government-led or industry-led, which is currently the status in South Africa. Then you also get single PROs that are responsible for all plastic packaging, for example. In South Africa, we have the separate ones. Or you get PROs only covering specific packaging or specific materials. And looking at the different schemes and the different models, there's actually no singular successful setup. But I think that, you know, what we've seen is that success is determined through an effective and efficient organization, financing, administration, and controlling of the system. Moving on to financial flows. I mean, we all know and it's acknowledged that waste management needs to be financed. I mean, you need a system for collecting and recycling packaging, and I mean, it has to be financed. This diversion from landfill is critical going forward. And it's also not possible to cover all the wastes when, you know, you only have fees for certain valuable packaging. We know that the PROs need to fund certain activities, but again, you know, if it's only targeted at specific waste streams, then you still sit with a lot of packaging that you find into the environment. Then the costs paid by the EPR fees. It's very important that, you know, there's sound financial management and governance around this. There needs to be transparency and accountability, which is very important. And then also very important that the data is managed very closely. And if you look at, it needs to include all packaging that's placed on the market by the producers and importers. And not only what, you know, there are many data gaps in South Africa at the moment, and I think that's it's going to be a major obstacle to get around when setting up the new mandatory EPR scheme. But it's crucial that there is this data for the baselines and for to monitor progress going forward. This is just a diagram to show the financial flows where you have the revenues feeding into the PRO system, and then what these revenues are used for. For example, you know, the administration of the PRO, all the collection activities, communication and information, data management, etc. And also the revenues, where do they come from? Obviously from the obliged companies, which would be the producers or the brand owners, retailers, importers, fillers, etc. So it's also very important to, and I'll get to that in a later stage, to actually identify who are these obliged companies in an EPR scheme. Okay, it's also very important to identify what kind of packaging what the EPR scheme will be covering. So in some countries, you'll see that packaging from households or private households or equivalent places of origination are covered. So this includes shipment packaging and service packaging, which is more packaging for the restaurants and the takeaway facility or restaurants. And then, you know, are we going to include transport, industrial, and all the other packaging? So it needs to be very clear what packaging or what kind of packaging is covered within this EPR scheme. And then again, who are the obliged organizations responsible for putting that packaging on the market? This is to show, you know, an example of who would the obliged organizations be in an EPR scheme. And then the red is, you know, the data. So there needs to be an interface where you determine how much needs to be paid. And it's very important that producers and importers and fillers, the producers saying, you know, with the brand owners, the retailers, whoever, are equally obliged to pay the fees. So this ensures that if you have a credible and interface, then you don't have this double payment. And also it's the point at which the companies bring goods into the market of the country. So very important that this data is maintained and it is kept up to date. Just something on the service packaging, which is the last one over there, is it's packaging put on the market to be used for other products. So it's not filled packaging. And the interface for this type of packaging is the company which sell the empty service packaging to retailers or takeaway restaurants, exactly. So they also need to pay an EPR fee. So it's actually complex to see, you know, who the obliged companies are and just to get all that data. Moving on from there, this would be a representation of the data that would be required. For example, I'm sure the PROs that already have quite a bit of data from their EPR paying companies. But then, you know, it's also very important to have a register for producers and importers. So producers, again, brand owners, importers, service packaging, retailers, etc. How much packaging are they putting on the market? Because that will determine the EPR fees they pay, etc. In the green data repository, you see there needs to be a register for waste management tasks, and I see that being the South African Waste Information System. And what they have here, which could be perhaps a nice to have going forward, is a register for experts as well. Just something on the EPR fees. The economics of the EPR fees need to be determined, and I think a lot of that has been done in South Africa already within the voluntary scheme. But also important, you know, the cost for collection, sorting, education awareness, and all the activities that the PROs need to fulfill as part of their mandate needs to be included in those costs. And I know that Petco presented, had a webinar earlier this week around, you know, what are the economics around EPR? So that's very important to take note of. Just something I want to say on modulation of fees. A lot of countries, and speaking to developing countries like Chile and India, it's actually very interesting that they are considering eco-modulation of their EPR fees already, even though they don't even have a voluntary system in place. And it's quite ambitious because, you know, some people would say, let's just get mandatory EPR in place in the country and then we can start looking at EPR fees. So, I mean, the modulation of the EPR fees. So what that means is that there's a bonus or a credit for packaging that is recycled in the country, as well as other metrics that can be included. And then a malus is a discredit if your format or your material is not recycled currently. So in other words, the EPR fee would be lower for a packaging material format that is recycled currently, up to a certain level or threshold. And then a malus would be if it's not. So obviously then brand owners and retailers would pay more for the packaging format that's not recycled, and they could be used as a disincentive. And I think, yeah, this is just something, my last slide, that I also want to talk about. Monitoring and reporting speaks to the transparency and the accountability of the producers within the scheme, which is extremely important. And how they do that, and what I'm sure you've seen in the draft EPR regulations, is that targets are then set up, and then the PROs would need to, say, reach those targets each year and then report on their progress around that. So there are generally 4 different types of targets. You'll see option 1, 2, and 3. I wasn't familiar with them because I see other countries are using them. We, in South Africa, we report on recycling quotas. Well, that's what I've seen, but I'm sure we'll hear more from the PROs in the next few presentations. But it's interesting that there are other targets besides recycling quotas around coverage of waste collection, accessibility, infrastructure, etc. So, and also you can't have all 4 targets in an EPR framework, apparently. You can only have 1. So yes, I don't know if there's any questions, but that's me.
Okay, thank you very much, Lauren. Because we have a bit of a gap in our agenda, it's possible to take questions now. So thank you for that overview. So the idea here was an overview of EPR itself and its different expressions that what we might see. So we can, Lauren, I'm going to stop sharing your screen so I can see the view. So I can take, I think, 3 questions. So I see Sally.
I think Kirsten dropped off. Oh, you're back again. Okay.
Okay, I see Sally has her hand up. Let's go to Sally and then we can have 2 more questions.
Hi, thanks, Lauren, for the overview. Quick question just with regards to, and I'm sure we'll touch on this again later when the department also presents, but can you maybe just give how this framework fits into the draft regulations that are currently out at the moment?
Okay, so the EPR framework, generally how it works is that the EPR framework is set up with all stakeholders, and then that would inform the policy going forward. So currently we have the draft regs out already, but this is still an ongoing process. And as I said, we will be reaching out to quite a few stakeholders in the industry and also have some online workshops to comment on the framework. And the idea is that then that would inform the regulations going forward. So yeah, that's how the process would work.
Okay, thank you very much, Lauren. Are there any other burning questions for Lauren before we move on in our agenda? Okay, I can't see any hands.
Yes, Christine.
Jimmy, hi.
Yes, thank you. And thank you to Lauren for a very comprehensive and interesting presentation. I wish that we have given you an opportunity to present some of the very valuable slides to the team at DIA, because you indicated some of the things that we sort of bypassed and actually gave them to the PRO to say the PRO would actually deal with this. But I think it's good for us, even in government, that we understand some of the basic and the technical necessities that goes into an EPR systems. But because we're part of the program that we are running, I'm sure there will be a constant discussion going forward. But my question is on the South African situation. Where do you see, or how do you see the role of, or rather the relationship between the PRO and the municipalities? We have the municipalities that are running the waste services provision, including recycling, though it's not happening throughout the country, but now we're bringing in the PROs to actually take over from the municipalities. How do you see that transition shaping up the issues of contracts, and all related matters? Thanks, Lauren and Kirsten.
Okay, so I'll go first. If you look at EPR literature and who's responsible for what waste stream, the producers would be responsible for what the product put on the market that becomes the waste. So at that level, the producers would be responsible for their plastic or metal or paper packaging, and they would be responsible for collecting, sorting, recycling that packaging. If you get to hazardous waste, then it would be the producers or the organizations that produce that hazardous waste and put that on the market, and then they're responsible for bringing that material back into the system and treating it, etc. The organic waste, it's a lot more complex because you don't have one specific organization, or you can't allocate the organic waste to specific producers, brand owners, retailers, farms, pack houses, etc. So that's something else. But then you have, what is left over. If you take out the packaging, the hazardous, the organic, and maybe some other waste streams, lighting, e-waste, etc. What is left over? So technically then the municipality should be responsible for everything that's left over, the collection and the treatment of that. So that's what we've seen in the literature. That's how the responsibilities are laid out. If you talk about the transition, definitely there is the Waste Act, who is responsible for collection and treatment of waste, and that is currently the municipalities. And then I was speaking to someone earlier this morning, and I'm so glad I did, because this question is quite pertinent. In the Constitution as well, it also lays out the responsibilities for who is responsible for waste management. And then again, when the PROs are trying to collect this waste, this packaging waste, would the municipalities be able to hand over the waste to them? That also needs to be brought into the discussions. And I'm not an expert there. I mean, I'm sure Kirsten and many other people on the call do, but I think that also needs to be addressed, that access to waste.
Okay, thank you very much, Lauren, and thank you, Dumisani. I think there's many important issues that have been raised there in terms of responsibility. I'd like to take, if Cherie or Audrey, if you would like to comment on that, please let me know. And I think it's exactly the intersection of these responsibilities which we need to be very clear about to have a working system going forward. Cherie, would you like to say something?
Yes, I wanted to say that to me, extended producer responsibility is all about shared responsibility. And when you look at all the successful schemes around the world, and there are about 400 of them, and they've been in operation since about 1990, they are supported by local governments, who in many countries also have targets, actually. So the targets set for producer responsibility organizations through EPR will only be met if local government also delivers on their mandate of providing basic services, etc. I think the other point that I wanted to make is that the expectation of what EPR can do needs to be realistic, and it has got to be supported by downstream economic instruments. The pricing strategy highlighted the economic instruments available to us very clearly, but unfortunately it didn't show how those need to be rolled out. So for example, in the countries where EPR works really well, you have systems like pay as you throw. You have landfill costs that are high, not cheap, so that there's a disincentive to send everything to landfill. And there's good enforcement so that there's no illegal dumping. You also have bans on certain products that cannot go to landfill. And the role of government too is to help to educate consumers that there should be a carrot and a stick approach, that in fact, the more you just throw away and don't sort, the more you should pay. So for example, in the UK, as Peter Skelton will probably be able to tell us, they're looking in Ireland at putting chips in their bins. So the more you throw out, actually, the more you pay. So there's got to be other mechanisms that support EPR. And I don't see them on the table or included in this discussion yet, but I think that they are also important. So I just wanted to emphasize that for me, EPR is a shared responsibility approach.
Thank you very much, Cherie. That's very clear, and I agree. And we do have a municipality as one of our members, and we are looking to increase municipality members, because I think these are key within our pact anyway as part of the conversation, but definitely as part of the broader landscape. So thank you for that. Peter, do you want to comment briefly? And then I'm going to go to Quentin Williams, who has his hand up. Sorry, Pravat, I think we need to move on. I see you also have your hand up. Please post your question in the chat. Okay, Peter, and then Audrey. Sorry, if you did want to say something, please also jump in.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Seems to be gone deaf. Yeah, I'm no EPR expert at all. I thought it was an excellent overview, Lauren, so thank you very much. I learned quite a lot. But to your point, Sherry, yes, I think you're absolutely right. You know, it is a shared responsibility. We have local authorities have the power to charge per weight per household in the UK. It's not really enforced, to my knowledge. Whereas the government role is more about maybe carrot than stick, and actually, you know, obviously funding RAP to do the national recycling campaign and the Recycle Now, providing resources, materials to municipalities to deliver recycling campaigns that comes from our EPR or PRN fees. So yeah, it can be carrot or stick, but I think you're absolutely right. There needs to be the clear role of city and national government to back up any EPR scheme. So I would concur.
Okay, thank you for that comment, Peter. We appreciate having people from across the sea on our call. Okay, Audrey, I see you. You're not. You.
No, I'm here. No, yes, just quickly. I think basically Cherie said a lot of what we agree on. So I don't totally support what she's saying. And the clear views will have to be looked at, because in South Africa, our municipalities, the majority just do not have the separation at source, which makes it a bit of a challenge. But that's exactly what we have to attack and, you know, work together to get it working smoother. Most of our, and which I'll show a little bit later, work has really been to develop an end market, and that is to make sure there is a take-off for the material. So how we will get to the material is obviously now part of the whole EPR discussion.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you also for highlighting where we do sit and the relationship with municipalities, and basically the collaborative work that we need to do in our country for an effective system. Quentin Williams.
Yeah, very, very good input and very good question from Dumasani, which is something that we're going to have to address quite a bit as we go forward with these draft regs on the table. And what is fascinating about the draft regs is actually that it makes that allowance for PROs and producers to engage with municipalities. And just to echo what the others have been saying, there's going to be challenges based on our legislation in terms of how these things are done. And as Lauren has illustrated and Sherry has mentioned, there are different types of models for EPR. And the reason why is because these countries have different types of regulations, business operations, and South Africa will have to be engaging on these hard talks as we go forward in terms of how we're going to define roles and responsibilities, because our current regulations and legislation allows us to do certain things, but it also prevents us to do certain things. So do we continue working within that ambit, or do we push hard to make changes in terms of our legislation, taking in consideration that it does take time to change some of our acts? So hard discussions is going to be needed as we go forward in terms of understanding where and how these roles and responsibilities are going to be implemented.
Okay, great. Thank you, Quentin. Thank you for your comments and engagement. I think you've raised a topic and a discussion that we can have a few webinar meetings on. I think really good then, and it's something the department will be doing. Dumi, I see your hand. The department will be doing it, looking at the intersection of these set of notices and regulations with other parts of legislation. And that's something that we can engage on as well. So please do send your comments, and looking forward to further discussions. Okay, and Dumi, I'm going to give you a gap quickly now, and then we'll move on to Cherie's presentation.
Thank you, Kirsten. A quick one. Yesterday we had a very interesting discussion with waste pickers on EPR and the notice and the regulations, and we learned a lot, and their proposals are very genuine. There's a lot that we actually overlooked, but now many of you would understand that if we don't get a chance to properly align the issue of waste pickers in the EPR, will get nightmares years to come, because in every conference, workshop, or radio interviews where waste pickers are given a platform, they'll always say negative things about the police and the role and the industry. So maybe to every speaker here or everyone in the group, maybe I'll be happy if we get a chance to discuss how best we could actually make sure that the issue of waste pickers, because in our last workshop with ISWA, it was clear that for EPRs in the developing world, there's no way that you can overlook the role of waste pickers. And so we've tried to capture that in the notice and the regulations, but they were unhappy about some of the things. Now, but yes, there were good proposals coming from them as well. So I'd like us to, as we go on, to think about this, and maybe we could have some few minutes to talk about the role or the issue of waste pickers within the EPR system. Do we want them to be part of the PRO, to be represented there, or we just want to consult them? And you know, there could be many options, but it would be interesting to listen, because we are here to also learn from some of your experiences. Thank you, Kirsten.
Thanks very much, Dumisani. It's good to hear about active engagement at all parts of the plastics value chain. And it's a pity that Arrow, one of our members, couldn't be in the meeting today. But obviously meetings during the day when members need to be active in collecting is quite difficult. So I will engage further. Thank you all for great discussions. We do have to now move on. I don't want to limit other speakers, but I also want to get these interesting comments and discussions. So Cherie, we welcome you to share your screen. I'm going to
hope it all goes well.
Thank you, Cherie. I'll introduce you in the meanwhile. So Cherie Scholz is the CEO of Petco, has been at Petco's helm since its incorporation in 2004. Cherie represents the PET sector on the board of Packaging South Africa, together with colleagues from all the packaging streams, I almost said screens, and she served on the Plastics SA Sustainability Council as its first chair. Cherie has been assisting with the development of voluntary PET EPR organizations in both Kenya and Ethiopia, and is on the advisory panel of the African Marine Waste Network. So thank you so much, Cherie. We really appreciate your time. We can currently see your presenter view on screen. So I don't know if you can.
All right, let's see. Maybe I shared the wrong one.
Yes, that's
yes,
great.
but no, I don't see my notes. Hold on a sec.
Okay.
When we practiced this, it was good. Sorry about that. What I think I need to do is find the correct. Lauren, how did you, oh no, you had two screens.
Yeah, I had two screens, so I could have my presenter view on the one and then the slides on the other.
Yeah, as Peter, I don't know how to see.
And now,
You only have one screen, Cherie. I think it's.
can you see my presenter view again?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can.
Sherry, look at the top. It says display settings. Click on that.
Yeah,
Click on that down arrow.
yes.
Swap presenter view and slide view. See
Swap
what
presenter view and slide view.
if that helps.
Yeah, that's the setting.
How do it doesn't, I can't seem to,
It's not highlighted, is it?
yes, I can't sort of touch it. This is most annoying.
Why don't you go off full screen? So you have two screens on one page. So minimize both. No, the other one, the middle, next one. The little one.
Now I can't even, seems like I'm almost sharing two. Oh dear me. This is a nightmare.
Sorry.
You have to wing it, Sherry.
Sorry?
You have to wing it, says David.
I'll have to wing it. Okay, well, that's also fine. All right, what can you see now? Anything?
No, we can't. Unless you have a cell phone with Zoom that you can speak to while your computer has the presentation on.
Hold on a sec. This is really weird.
I think that was the button to look at, that display setting.
Yeah. Or Prabhat suggests that you email the presentation to me. I project on my side, and then you can.
No, it's going to be too big. But I'll tell you what. Don't worry. We'll make a plan. You know, we come from the recycling sector. We can try and work this out. Hold on a sec. So I can always look at my. I'm going to share that. Let's try and go into, there we go. Okay.
Okay, great.
All right, so I'll read my notes off somewhere else. If I get myself totally muddled, you can all just have a good laugh at my expense. It is Friday after all.
That has worked, Sherry.
I hope it works. I can't even find, oh, there we go. There's my mouse. So good morning, everyone. It's really great to be with you all. I'm sorry that I can't see you all. I'm really honored to share the Petco journey with you all. It almost feels like a lifetime ago when a colleague and I were approached to take a vision of what the then PET Forum had of what a voluntary extended producer responsibility organization could look like, and put this actually into practice. So that was late 2004, and I must say that it has been a really exciting, challenging, and rewarding journey. So we were incorporated in 2004, although I must stress that the PET Forum, which was a group of very strategic thinkers representing the different value chain members of the PET sector, started looking at a solution for PET bottles from 1998. And why I'm stressing that is that this isn't a quick journey. It does take time to put processes and procedures and build capacity. It takes a number of years. So we were incorporated in 2004 as a not-for-profit company, voluntary and industry-driven, and effectively founded, funded, and managed by what we call the obliged industry. Lauren covered the definition for EPR, but of course the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development probably has the most famous definition. And if anybody wants to really read up about extended producer responsibility, they updated their 2001 document on waste management in 2016. It's quite a hefty document, but it's worth a read. So they define EPR as an environmental policy approach in which a producer's responsibility for a product is extended to the post-consumer stage of a product's life cycle. And they emphasize that it is a mixture of financial, operational, it differs in different countries. And the OECD was actually founded in 1961, really to stimulate economic progress across the world. It's got 37 members, and it also has key partners, of which South Africa is actually one, along with India, Brazil, China, and Indonesia, which I think is interesting. So traditional systems don't consider the end-of-life solution for a product. Once the consumer is done with it, it becomes whose problem? Who takes accountability? But when you actually look at EPR, it's fundamentally concerned with providing that end-of-life solution. And as I alluded to before, this can be based on a shared or full financial and or physical responsibility. I'm operating more than one tool here. And I think what's really important is we are talking about the paper and packaging sector, specifically plastics on behalf of the SA Plastics Pact. But the value chain has many players. Some have multiple roles, but others not. So now as a brand owner in 2020, if you don't know what happens to your product after it's served its initial purpose, you then face the increasing risk of a range of economic instruments, from taxes to bans. And very often bans and taxes are considered where there are no other options in place. And if you look here at the PET value chain, we have a couple of raw material producers, we have a number of converters, some converters bottle as well, some bottlers just buy preforms, some brand owners do their own converting and bottling. So this value chain is a complex one. Please bear with me while I operate my multiple tools here. So it's no longer enough to claim that something can or could be recycled, or that it's technically recyclable somewhere on the planet, but it's just not economically feasible to do it. EPR must ensure that it will be recycled, and everyone in the value chain has a shared responsibility. I think that I need to change my wording here about saying that everyone is a producer, because not everyone is a producer, and this is very key in our regulations to identify specifically who a producer is, alongside recognizing that the obliged value chain also have responsibilities. So one is the point of payment, but everybody in the chain actually has their own responsibilities in the whole value chain. So PETCO is therefore extended producer responsibility in action, working collectively on behalf of those who make the raw material, produce the bottles, fill them, own the brands, and who retail them. And PETCO's aims have not changed. Our mission is the same as it was in 2004, and that is to minimize the environmental impact of post-consumer PET on natural systems by achieving sustainable growth in PET plastic recycling, by supporting existing and encouraging new collection and recycling initiatives, and by promoting a strong focus on public and consumer education awareness programs, including design for recycling. Very, very important. So moving along to the financial side of how PETCO works. The company is financed by way of an EPR fee and also grants in aid paid to us by our voluntary members to fulfill their EPR. Our membership actually represents close to 90% of the volume of the PET beverage bottle market in South Africa. And I think Peter can confirm that there are some mandatory EPR systems where they have 90% compliance. So the fact that we have a voluntary system and have almost 90% compliance, it's 87% to be exact, is actually really quite a positive indication of how committed the industry has been. We have a full board of directors that represent that entire value chain. They are non-executive directors. Their role is oversight and strategic input. They are not involved operationally because the confidential data and information that we get stays within the operational team. The board are nominated by the sectors that they represent, and they are not remunerated. It's part of their extended producer responsibility to be accountable for the products that they put onto the market. And to give you an idea, the current Petco EPR fee works out to about 1 to 2 cents per bottle. So the effort is really to do the work that we need to do, but to do it in the most cost-effective manner, because ultimately we don't want to add unnecessary costs to the system. We want to be running EPR schemes on an efficient basis. What happens to the expenditure? Where does this money actually go? Most of our budget, the biggest portion, is through direct financial support. Petco contracts recyclers. For us, a recycler is not a collector. Many people say they recycle at home when in actual fact they are sorting, they're not recycling. A recycler is a processor who takes previously waste material, reprocesses it, and has an end product that they can sell downstream. So we contract recyclers with an end-use market in their value chain, and we make a contribution towards every ton, every kilogram actually, of material that they collect and recycle. They use part of the support from Petco to buy bottles. So they have the relationship, the funding comes in here and it is passed down, and that enables them to consistently buy bottles. Back in 2004, bottles were not collected because there was no consistent market. Nobody was continually buying them. The prices were really erratic. In fact, they were only collected as and when importers came in to take bottles because the exchange rate was good, and then they actually left the country. So this financial mechanism created the opportunity for collectors to start collecting bottles and to be paid for them. The second biggest portion of our budget goes into equipment and training for collectors. So the recyclers are also training their own collectors, but Petco supports here as well. The third portion goes to marketing and awareness, and in fact the smallest portion of the budget goes to admin expenses, admin and operating. How do we know how much to give recyclers? We have an annual recycling target, which to date as a voluntary organization has been set by our board, and we have based it actually on an original discussion that we had with the Department of Environmental Affairs in the early days when we started. So we allocate this targeted tonnage amongst our contracted recyclers, and it's based on their capacity, their performance, and the market sector. We have contracts in place, and these are 5-year contracts, so that recyclers have an opportunity to build their networks, to get investment and expand their operations. We only provide the agreed financial support in arrears upon receipt of independently audited figures based on the amount of post-consumer material bought from collectors. So we audit our recyclers quarterly, and all the contracts stipulate the tonnage allocations, the funding formulas, and other terms and conditions. So we pay on performance, which is key, and this also enables us to monitor during the year how we're actually doing. So we know that the beverage sector is very seasonal. People buy more soft drinks in summer, over holiday times, celebratory times. So we know that winter is a quiet period, but we're able to track quarterly whether we're on track in reaching our target. We're also able to track whether in fact the consumption is in line with what our forecast is, or whether the markets are up or whether they're actually down. So during the year, it requires quite careful monitoring of many market indicators to ensure that both budgets and performance and targets are met. And we then use the figures that we actually accomplish in any given year as the basis for the forecast for the following year. When we started way back in 2004, we had one contracted partner and one project. In fact, at that stage, we exported chip to a neighboring fiber plant. Last year, we had 6 partners with 11 projects, although 2 of them faced headwinds and one is under business rescue, and we hope will re-emerge. And the other is a victim of the cessation of large infrastructure projects in the country. They do geotextiles and they are facing headwinds. So our end-use markets include bottle to fiber, bottle to filament, bottle to food grade, and then most importantly, the pinnacle, I guess, because this closes the loop totally, is the carbonated soft drink grade bottle to bottle, which is also, of course, the most expensive end use because it has the most technical requirements. These are our voting members. We have 27 of them. And I think that one of the challenges that I often face is to share with consumers and general society which brands all of these voting members actually represent. But it is thanks to these organizations that we're able to do the work that we do. I'm now going to move on to our track record and our targets. This graph shows the achievements from 2013. We have them from 2005. In fact, in 2005, we collected 16%. We collected 9,850 tons. And you would then see this graph has just grown and grown. But in 2019, we had challenges. That was when we lost one of our bottle-to-bottle partners in about August of that year. And it was the first time in Petco's history that we did not meet our target. I do have to add that there have been at least 3 years in our history we've exceeded our target. So we did know that at one stage or another this might happen, but still it didn't sit comfortably with the team. And in fact, this is what we were, at the end of last year, we were still aiming towards. We hoped at that stage to reach a 75% collection for recycling rate of PET beverage bottles. 2020 has come along with COVID-19 and absolutely everything has changed. You'll see that despite that consistent growth, you'll notice that in 2015, it was the first year that we exceeded the 50% target. It was the first time in South Africa that we collected more than we actually sent to landfill. But the COVID-19 impacts are profound. So is load shedding. We've had lost production time in lockdown. We've had lost production time due to load shedding. We have workforces in quarantine. We have a lack of consumption. We are estimating that the consumption of PET will drop close to 20%. That means far less bottles, but it also means far less income from the food and beverage industry to the government. It means less of everything. It also means less demand for end-use markets. The textile industry globally, to which our fiber goes, has virtually come to a standstill. People are simply not buying clothing. The automotive industry has come to a standstill. People are not using recycled plastics to go into automotive carpets, boot liners. So it is increasingly likely that we will have to realistically revise these targets for the first time in our existence. So we are working on that, and we'll effectively have to see how the figures look after the next quarter and what happens with COVID-19 and whether we actually reach our plateau and move forward from that. The development and maintenance of a growing viable end-use market for collected material is absolutely crucial to a sustainable recycling model. You cannot collect material if you can't do something with it. You will just land up with warehouses full of materials. If you speak to many countries around the world, you'll get an indication of how they are struggling now that China has effectively closed their doors to most plastic imported waste. It's created unprecedented challenges. And I think many countries are only realizing now that they simply don't have the infrastructure locally to recycle everything. Fortunately, we haven't been as badly impacted by that as many other countries because we've had 15 years of developing our own end-use markets and plans to take it. But we believe that it's critical to have a number of end-use markets to cater for the wide range of products that get placed onto the market, for example, colored bottles, and also because of the nature of the informal system. We also understand that big brand owners have made really bold commitments for which we salute them to incorporate the use of rPET into their products. And we have worked hard and are working really hard to focus on prioritizing bottle-to-bottle projects. So you can see in the different greens, bottle-to-food grade, bottle-to-fiber is still a very big portion of our end-use markets. Industrial is strapping from the bottle to filament and geotextiles. I think that will give you a good idea of where the material goes. Also important is our engagement with stakeholders on issues of design for recycling, and these continue to provide benefits for the improved quality of feedstock. We released our updated design for recycling guidelines last year and have been working with government and the Pact to actually look at policy relating to these and to refine the definitions. And I'm really, really excited because I'm sure you all noticed this week that one of our members has changed their green Sprite bottles to clear bottles. They sincerely deserve a round of applause, as these are systemic changes. They don't happen overnight. So well done to our member for doing that. We run annual workshops as well as individual one-on-one training with our members to identify problem areas with their packaging and to further input material into the recycling stream. So this is an ongoing effort with all of our members. Just bear with me for a moment while I catch up on my multiple screens here. Okay. So our continued support for recyclers, those contracted agreements that we have with our recyclers has increased the collection volumes and the investment in infrastructure. In fact, over 1.2 billion rand of PET recycling infrastructure has been developed in South Africa, and this has protected us against the Chinese ban largely. One of our end-use markets, recent end-use markets, is strapping, which I mentioned can be made from colored bottles. It conforms really to very stringent specifications, and we'd actually like to see more of South African industry using the strapping, because unfortunately at the moment South Africa is still an importer of strapping. By the way, the strapping is also 100% recyclable, so somehow we need to encourage the use of local material with recycled content here. PETCO also partners with a range of organizations on special projects and joint ventures. For example, this is a baler that we co-sponsored with Plastic South Africa to the Kruger National Park many years ago to ensure that post-consumer PET in the southern parts of the park could be baled and transported to a buyback center. Subsequently, in partnership with Polyco and Packaging South Africa, we sponsored a second one to service the northern regions of the park. And these baling machines have actually reduced incineration of materials in the park by close to 90%. We embrace partnerships and we see the value of collaborative effort at PETCO. We undertake a whole range of projects, from in-kind donations and joint cause marketing campaigns to joint ventures with government, other industry bodies, packaging partners, plus our shareholder members, to leverage our funding as well as reach a broader range of stakeholders. Here we partnered with ALPLA to sponsor Wastepreneur trolleys for the collection of bottles. And in fact, last year, we attracted an additional 11 million rand from our members in joint venture funding, where they actually co-sponsored projects directly. I think the PET sector has an important role to play in contributing to the transformation of the South African economy. There are few issues that are more important. PETCO's spend on collectors focuses on small, micro and medium enterprises, while pursuing increases in employment in the sector. Our approach also seeks to minimize the risk of potentially harmful unintended consequences from interventions in the PET value chain, particularly to the lives and livelihoods of the most vulnerable. To give you an idea, last year, for example, we ran 3 accredited training courses for informal reclaimers, benefiting 105 delegates. We ran 34 reclaimer recycling workshops, benefiting 1,835 delegates, as well as 4 associate member workshops and 11 exhibitions in 4 provinces teaching the benefits of collection, sorting and recycling. We also support projects and initiatives through the sponsorship of infrastructure and equipment. This is really with the aim of unlocking collections and helping collectors to improve their efficiencies as well as the quantity and quality. In this photograph, you can see one of the 20 PETCO-sponsored trolleys to reclaimers through the Wildlands Trust and Gary Player partnership. These are cages that we sponsored for a cooperative in Sasolburg in the Free State. This buyback center was actually launched in 2014, and it's now supported by 86% of households in the area on a completely voluntary basis. They have since taught other reclaimers in the area how to sort recyclables and sell them on collectively for higher prices.
Okay. Thanks, Cherie. 1 more minute.
Okay, the development of women in particular deserves special attention. It's estimated that 51% of women in the informal sector are involved in collection. Education and awareness, I think, is key. Beach cleanups and encouraging consumers to sort. Also, having a scientific approach and doing consumer research. We have done exactly that, the first consumer research in South Africa on recycling habits, as well as schools research to see how we can better intervene in schools. Consumer education, really creating the awareness that you can do one thing. If all the sustainable development goals are overwhelming, pick one of them. And the one that we've encouraged people to do is recycle plastic bottles. When we look back over the 16 years that Petco's been in existence, our voluntary members have actually contributed 524 million Rand in EPR fees. This has allowed 18 billion bottles to be collected. It's created almost 8 billion Rands worth of downstream new product value. It's created over 60,000 income opportunities, reduced landfill space by almost 5 million cubic meters, and reduced carbon emissions by 1.2 million. So the benefits are very clear and measurable. These are the impacts we've had on the Sustainable Development Goals, and you can see these in our annual review and on our website. And we've shared our model very importantly with Kenya, with Ethiopia, with Mozambique, Namibia, Zimbabwe, and we're working very closely with our key members to share what we have learned in South Africa and to help them develop infrastructure regionally. So in summary, Petco is a collector of self-imposed fees, not material. We represent the obliged PET members who choose to participate. We employ an operational management team. We are a subsidizer of recycling projects and an indirect contributor to collectors as well as a direct contributor. We are the interface between industry, consumers, NGOs and government on EPR. We're the ham in the sandwich, as my chairperson says. But looking forward, as we move from voluntary to mandatory EPR, EPR will now be a legal requirement for paper and packaging producers. And what we need to unpack are who are producers, who shares responsibility in the packaging value chain, what additional support does EPR require to be effective, how do we set stretch targets that are realistic and achievable? We don't want people to give up. What monitoring and evaluation model do we need to develop? What are the critical success factors? Thanks for listening and thanks for the opportunity, and I hope that I answered all the questions you asked me to, Kirsten.
Fantastic, Shuri. That was a really interesting and very useful overview, and thank you so much for the details you shared of your system and structure and of the investment and the way that we've been able to see PET recycling and investment because of your good work. So we really thank you for that. And also just on a note from SA Plastics Pact, your consumer research. So Janine and I have put together a proposal, and we're partnering with Plastics SA's initiative to end plastic waste. And your consumer research in recycling has been an excellent tool to help us shape our proposal. So thank you so much for that. We're going to take questions at the end of this section. So I'm going to welcome Audrey Spangenberg to share her screen, and I will do a quick intro to Audrey while she's doing that. Audrey is the CEO of the Polystyrene Association of South Africa and the South African Vinyls Association. So as communicated in the chat earlier, Audrey will present on SAVA, the South African Vinyls Association, with Mandy in our follow-up presentation next week, Thursday. She has been in this industry, Audrey, for 10 years, coming from 15 years in the business and marketing industry. So Audrey is a hub of wisdom in terms of the material streams and the plastics industry. And Audrey is passionate about what both the associations stand for and is committed to ensuring the industry's extended producer responsibilities are met. So thank you very much, Audrey. Okay, Audrey, you're on mute.
I know. No, I'm not.
Okay.
Again. I found the button, and in that process, I moved to the next screen. Wait, oh, Chris, we're all having it was working just now like Cherie's. How did I go to the, I don't go to previous, oh, there, can I go there to a previous slide? No, oh yeah, maybe at the bottom. There, found it. Awesome, sorry. Morning, everyone. Yes, thank you also for this opportunity. It's absolutely great. It's really going to be difficult to tell you exactly everything we do, and I'm quite happy to know that Cherie covered quite a bit actually. So I can skip over everything that she said and say ditto. But with a smaller budget. Our tonnages are not as large as Petco's or Polyco's for that matter. So we do all the above, but with a limit or smaller budget because of the smaller tonnages. The Polystyrene Association was actually formed in 2010 and was also done by voluntary. It's also a non-profit, extended producer responsibility, and it's also voluntary. So our members are at the moment representative of about 70% of the expanded polystyrene industry. The high impact polystyrene, the HIPS market is only around, I would say 20%, but we're very quickly gaining there. And I'll explain to you why. When we started in 2010, what we found is that we first had to really develop end markets because they were just non-existent. There was absolutely no end market for recycled polystyrene in the country. So the first thing that we started working on, which I'll go into detail now, is the decor market, and then we've grown from there. And I will show you just exactly how we've done that. What we've been doing also in the last 4 or 5 years is all our projects are BEE projects, thereby, you know, also our members adhering to those regulations. I'm not going to say too much about the whole industry waste management plan. I don't know, everybody knows this overview, I'm sure, of DEF and then Packaging SA, the PROs, and then where all the plastics PROs are sitting. I want to show you our whole recycling process because I'm not sure, I don't think everybody has really seen this. So I'm skipping over EPR because Cherie and Lauren has really done great work with that. I just think that it's really important for the SA Plastics Pact and everybody to work towards the EPR scheme that's been put out now by government. We can't have targets in different places. So we need to, you know, just have a joint or a similar goal for all of us. The only thing is that I think timing is not totally on our side. So the government is rearing to go, and we're very excited about that and happy, but it is putting pressure on our industry to really get together, and this is what we have to do. So explaining the end markets, as I said before, we started with the decor end market, which is picture frames, cornices, skirtings, etc. So when we started these companies, where there are 4 picture frame manufacturers in South Africa, they were using virgin material to make the picture frames, and now more than 90% of their picture frames, cornices and skirtings are all made from recycled polystyrene. So that was a big growth for us, and it was education. It was quite a process to get there and get equipment out in the market for the product to be transported, because as everybody knows, polystyrene is a bit of a lightweight situation. The other big market, but then I'd like to focus today quite a bit on the building industry and building panels, the lightweight cement. This product has been developed in the last 4 years. It's used extensively in Europe, so it's not new technology. Basically, they've also, well, especially in Europe, they use virgin polystyrene for this whole process. So in South Africa, we've once again engaged with the industry and said, let's start using recycled. We started with the University of Tshwane and with the CSIR testing the products to make sure that it still adheres to all the regulations for the building industry. So that process was actually quite a long one. If you look at the recycling rates, as I've said, you know, polystyrene is lightweight. There isn't that much in the market. You know, it looks like a lot because polystyrene is 96% air, 4% product. So it is a lightweight product. So the tonnages are not high, but the volumes are. Each month at this stage, we are recycling about 450 tons of polystyrene, which is 22 million cubes of landfill space. And we're quite, you know, very proud of the growth that we have shown in the last, especially like 5 years or so, once the end markets have been developed. Then, as I said, most of our projects, all our projects actually, are all BEE projects. So we have, and I'm going to talk about the building project first, but what we do with the building project is we have entrepreneurs that we are giving the technology to for a lightweight cement factory. So we are setting them up in the business. The producer of the bricks, which there are also about 4 or 5 in the country, are helping them to set up their own factories. So the first one I'll show you now is a municipal one that will be opening quite fairly shortly. The wonder or the awesomeness of this product is you won't believe that polystyrene can be used in a lightweight cement, but it's quite revolutionary. What is nice about the blocks is that it's similar or exactly the same as building with brick and mortar. So we didn't have to go and reintroduce a whole new system of green building to the labor market or the bricklayer, because he's already used to working with a brick. So it was easy for them to train to use the product. About 18 kilograms of polystyrene is used in 1 cube of bricks, which is quite a bit. Why we want to grow this whole project specifically is, I'll show you now, is just how the tray, the post-consumer trays are used. Because once again, yeah, virgin material was used, then only white material was used, and then we started introducing the black trays, which is now totally also recyclable. I'm sure all of you have a picture frame in your house or office that is made from recycled polystyrene here in South Africa. If you look at the picture frame in the frame shop where all those little triangles are hanging, and you look on the inside, you'll see that it's not made from wood. It's a recycled or polystyrene. Basically what they do is they extrude the whole picture frame where the frame. The inside is recycled polystyrene and the outside is a virgin material. The machines are calibrated for that. 41 hamburger clamshells goes into one A4 sized picture frame. So all of these, and this is where we've started really with projects where we go to a cafeteria, they just scrape clean, feeding schemes, they scrape clean, and the polystyrene is then recycled. Our role is much more of a, I think we kind of in the beginning phases, a few years behind Petco, where they started in 2004, the end markets were developed. We are now at the point that we really must make sure that the buyers and sellers get into contact with each other. The biggest project also we're starting at the moment, and we're launching it quite soon, is the 6-pack yoga tubs, and that's what I spoke about briefly the other day. We were on the verge of launching with schools at the beginning of this year, and COVID happened. So the schools were not happening anymore. We have now since joined up with Pick It Up and working with the waste reclaimers in the Gauteng area or Johannesburg area to get those 6-pack yoga tubs, and they will then be recycled into this desk. This is called a Tutu desk because Archbishop Desmond Tutu is the patron of this project. 1 kilogram of yoga tub goes into one desk. So the idea is for children or any school to collect the tubs. We will get the tubs from them, and then they will be recycled into these desks. We do have now also 2 washing plants for the yoga tubs if it is still contaminated. If it does have some yogurt in at changing to a polystyrene label on six-pack yogurt tubs, and that's where the design for recycling comes in, so that we don't have to wash off the label and also then have that expense of water, and we're sitting with a pulp at the end of the day from the paper. So just to minimize that waste. So as I said, this project is kicking off with Danone actually in Gauteng fairly soon. We also have another desk that has been developed. That's not the Tutu desk, but it's another desk and also uses the yogurt tubs. We are also, just quickly to mention, the lightweight cement bricks. We are testing at the moment also for the yogurt tubs to go into the lightweight cement bricks, and indications are at the moment that they will totally adhere to the specifications of Agrement certification, NHBRC, SAB approval. So we want to make sure that these products are not inferior, you know, they're actually quite superior because they have the insulation properties and they're also very strong. The bricks will then also be okay. The paper label will also be fine in this process, and colors don't matter. So that really helps. Everybody, I'm sure and hope, knows about bread tags for wheelchairs. We have over 600 volunteers, collectors across the country who collect these bread clips, and there you can see an example of the bread clips there right at the bottom. And it's just amazing how communities come together. And we've changed the project so that communities are collecting for a person for a wheelchair in their own community. So if a school in a town collects, they will collect for somebody's grandmother in the school who needs a wheelchair, for example. So the wheelchairs really go into the community. We sometimes give or buy just a basic wheelchair because it's really better than having a wheelbarrow. But often if we work with children, we will make sure that they get a wheelchair that is actually made for purpose, because we don't want the wheelchair to hamper their development or their growth. You know, as they grow, their needs change. So this project is now, we also started it in Australia, by the way. So Australia is also now recycling, but they are obviously running it there. We're not shipping the tags anywhere, please. They're collecting their own and doing their own project. The bread tags are recycled into seedling trays, and they're also recycled into the picture frames. And we are paid a premium price for them because it goes for this cause. To come back to what our plans are going forward and what our EPR scheme will look like is, we believe that, and we understand that polystyrene, the expanded especially, does have challenges as far as transporting is concerned. So we don't want to drive around with a whole lot of fresh air and add to any carbon footprint by doing that. So at the moment, for example, the polystyrene is ingoted, so it takes a process where the air just gets taken out of the product and it's transported to the picture frame guys. But our plan is to rather, and as I said, the first one will be built at Drakenstein Municipality in Paarl. We've done about half of the equipment has been made already, so the rest is in process of making. And this is a container unit that will be put out at the municipality's grounds, which is, they've already allocated a piece of land for us. We've got a BE entrepreneur that's going to run the project. We have the housing department of Drakenstein who will be the offtake of most of the bricks. We will then work with, or have been engaging with, the waste management department of the municipality, who will then have the waste sorters, collectors, waste pickers, who can bring their polystyrene to the municipality where the sorting happens. And this cuts out just all that distance, and now we'll be able to really pay a bit more and not, you know, pay something, adding to the value chain where there's a value to the product. And I think that's been our challenge all the time, is creating a value. If there's no value at the end of the chain, we can't pay the collector to collect the material. So we are now at a point that they are paying for the the recycled polystyrene, and it's fairly good market-related prices. It's just we need to bring the solution to the people. We believe strongly that a community will have a project where they can run it, where they're proud of it, where housing goes up in their own community, where they can build with their own bricks. It's an easy process, it's a cheap process. Houses are insulated, it's fireproof, and it does not, and it's got a water retardant also in it. This whole, the actual original chemical, and I think you can see it, I'll show it to you a little bit later. It's not a chemical, it's an additive. It's just a flame retardant that covers the polystyrene beads, and the beads are then used in the lightweight cement. So the idea is to have a trailer in each community or each municipal area, where the entrepreneur will then have his trailer and truck, and he can travel around and collect the polystyrene. So at the moment, what's happening is we are baling the polystyrene. On the left, you can see it's a whole lot of offcuts from a company that makes cornices. So those are the offcuts from cornices and skirtings, etc. On the right, that is a whole lot of stuff that material that came from fruit farms, cereals farms. We go and collect the baled material from the farms. On the top left is basically what happens in Kraaifontein, where the polystyrene is also taken out of the waste stream, and it is out of the sorting facility, and it is baled. And that material then goes straight to the hammer mill, which really chops it up. And that is then exactly what we use in the lightweight cement brick. So on the right, you'll see the black, green, doesn't matter. Those are obviously the Woolworths Avo trays in there. And it gets mixed together, and it's not a problem because it goes into these molds for the lightweight cement bricks. It's quite easy to cut for conduit into the brick. So, and as I said, it's easy to build. This is a project of 300 houses in Philippi that is just about completed. The Zeitz Museum in Cape Town was also built with this brick. Also, there's a big shopping centre in Table Bay that's also been built by it. So there's really quite a few of these projects happening already. A lot of the material that we're using in the recycled, the lightweight cement bricks, is recycled seedling trays. So we've engaged with the South African Nursery Association, where the plant growers use the polystyrene trays, and when the plants are taken out, you really have those white trays with the soil in it. They are, when new ones are delivered to the buyer or to the farmer or the plant grower, old ones are collected and recycled into the lightweight cement brick. So this is a whole reverse logistics project that we run with one of our members. There you can see the advantages of the brick. It's fire resistant. It's very accurate to build with. It's efficient as far as the environmental impact is concerned, and it has a thermal efficiency. It's really cooler in summer and warmer in winter. So it adheres to all the eco-building regulations, and it's really not difficult to build with. You also build quicker with it. It's not very different in price. It's very similar to normal brick and mortar, but your advantage is also that you build quicker. It's a quicker method to build with. To put things a bit in perspective, for a 100 square meter house, we would use 500 kilograms of polystyrene beads. And there's just one house, I think that one's in Vereeniging. We also look, recycling is a major initiative of ours and a major drive in what we do, but we take the health and safety of the products in the food industry very seriously. So therefore we developed a food compliance responsible initiative where all our members have undertaken to adhere to the EU standards. So we work closely, and we've tested just recently, we've tested all the products on the market. We did a random test without anybody knowing, and everything is above you know, within EU regulations. We follow the EU regulations as far as anything in production is concerned. We've engaged with, and I think this is quite important to mention, is that in Europe, and America actually, but especially in Europe, there's quite a lot happening as far as life cycle analysis of polystyrene, and really comparing the whole cycle. And there's a few companies that have come up. There's Styrenics. There's a new circular economy Styrenics solution, where they are developing also end markets, other end markets for polystyrene. So I just want to show you the future of polystyrene is very, we're not only stopping at the bricks. They are working on technology in Europe where the polystyrene will be brought back into a monomer. Total is one of the biggest retail or brand owners involved in that project. And it's also been it's really important to know that polystyrene offers a distinct advantage, and this is not my words, this is a professor saying that over other products commonly used in packaging, it's got the lowest carbon footprint, and this has been proven, and this is something that we going to circulate to our industries and to the market to know that polystyrene, if you look at a whole life cycle analysis, it is a very good product, but we have to recycle it. So that is why we really put in all the hard work to make sure that there is a market in South Africa. If we look quickly at the market applications, look, these figures come from the DTI, but if you look at, I'm going to not go through all of it, but if you look on the right-hand corner, let's look at 2019. 27,708 tons is for food packaging in South Africa. And at the total of polystyrene that comes in is in 2019 was 67,000 tons. So this is original virgin beads that are the hard, like a pellet. And just to put things in perspective, the rest of that polystyrene all goes into buildings as insulation. On bridges, they use the polystyrene as the inside core of the bridge pillars, etc. So if we look at polystyrene going into the food market or the packaging market in South Africa, it's around 27,000 or 28,000 tons. Here are all our members, and as I said recently, Danone joined, so we are hoping for all the other yogurt manufacturers to join soon. That is just about my story. I spoke very quickly. I'm sure I'm in time. I tend to always speak quickly, sorry. And then what I want to put on the table, Kirsten, just before I finish, is that please, 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 can I have an opportunity to speak to each and every brand owner, retailer, and have an opportunity to do this and more presentations to your technical teams, your packaging teams, so that we can bring this message across. The time has come for us to say what we are doing. We haven't really done that on a big scale because of budget, but we also wanted to make sure that we have a story to tell. We don't want to tell you recycle your polystyrene and you say, oh, but I can't. So we do want to make sure that there is really an in market and it's a viable one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Audrey, for your time and for all your efforts in developing these end markets with your partners. We really are excited to see the range of end markets here. And I think, as Cherie noted, a range of end markets does build a more resilient system. We have about 5 minutes for questions before I will introduce our colleagues from DFF. So,
should have spoken slower.
Sorry, no, that was that was good because we've got 5 minutes for questions. So
yeah, that's the point. Okay, I'm listening.
I actually allowed the discussion in the beginning to run on a bit. Okay. You've got your first sign up. Link is very keen for you to work or to speak to RCL Foods. I'm going to go back and start with the first question in the chat. Where is it? Okay, there we are. Johan from Sapro and MyPlace asks, what is the industry representation in terms of polystyrene paying EPR fees? Are most of your converters involved?
They are, as far as expanded polystyrene is concerned. So the Polystyrene Industry Association was formed by really the converters of the expanded, the food trays and the seedling trays, etc. So the HIPS market is around 5,000 tons a year. It's not a huge market, but Danone, being one of the biggest, have now joined last year. So the next ones that really need to join, and I'm still not going to mention them by name, is, for example, Parmalat, Faircape, Clover, etc. They still need to join. And that is then we'll be able to really tackle the yogurt tub industry, or the yogurt tub to desk and the other desk projects, because we can't use the expanded guys' funds for developing an end market for HIPS, but now we have, so at least that's been done. From home, I did that. Percentage-wise, Johan, it's actually around 90%, as I said, for expanded polystyrene, and you're around 20-30% for HIPS.
Okay, great. Thank you, Audrey. And I think really important to note, it is often something which PROs struggle with when most of your funding base comes from a certain group within the industry, to then use that funding to then seed initiatives and projects in other areas is quite difficult.
Yes.
Then I'm going to go to David Drew, estimated collection in terms of for recycling rates.
Froze.
For recycling
Should
rates.
I ask the question? Sorry, Kirsten, you froze, but you're back.
Okay, my internet connection is unstable according to my message.
Well,
so Oliver will jump in if I freeze and don't unfreeze.
Oh, okay.
So just to note. So David asks, in terms of collection for recycling rates, because it does seem that Joburg informal collectors, that they're often not collecting HIPS and EPS.
Yes.
What do your current recycling rates look like? And you are engaging the informal sector. What does that look like?
Okay. I think we missed the question there, the multi-layer material to go into the bricks. That Priola asked. So can I quickly answer that?
Yes.
And then I'll move on to David's question. No, it's fine. The multi-layer material cannot go into this brick, no, because the brick has been specifically designed for insulating, having the insulation properties of polystyrene. There are many other bricks being produced in South Africa that do use, or some of them that do use the multi-layer. We have stuck with the polystyrene because also it takes a very long time and it's really expensive to go through the agreement certification. So as soon as you change your product, you must reapply for a new certification. So we have stuck with the recycled polystyrene in this one. David, estimated collection for recycling rates. Estimated rate ranges, we can't prescribe. Obviously, the recyclers always want it for free, but a lot of the recyclers in our industry, what they've done, especially the picture frame guys, they've got trucks and trailers on the road and they will collect for free, or then they'll pay around R1 a kilo. And this makes it really difficult for us. It's a challenge because the waste management companies are not going to collect and sort the material if they're going to get R1 a kilo. It just doesn't make economic sense. So that was the major reason we also started really developing other end markets so that there's a competition for the material. So hence the lightweight cement product. So the lightweight cement product can take more material, and because they've been using virgin beads, they're now, willing to pay around R5 or R6 a kilo. And it also depends who it is, where it is, what's the state of the material, etc. But as I said, we're collecting from Kraaifontein, and we've come to an agreement that it's a feasible and reasonable amount. that is being paid. It is a challenge though, because we are finding that waste management companies it's not the first thing they want to collect and recycle, because it's lightweight. You know, you understand that. And hence our whole plan to have a municipal hub, so that we can bring the solution to a community and it doesn't have to go through, you know, we don't rely too much on the waste management companies because we understand economies of scale. I just want to read the rest of David's question. He said, Joburg informal collectors don't seem to correct. They do not really take it for exactly the same point I made now, is that it's lightweight. But we believe if we have a lightweight brick at a municipality or to the Marlborough drop-off site, and we're planning to even put one there. So I believe if there's a demand, they will definitely collect the material if there's a demand. So I've had meetings with them, I've had quite a few engagements with the waste pickers in that area, and we are working closely with them to see if we could get a solution. My recycling rates, should I quickly answer that, or is my 5 minutes now up?
Yes, I think quickly recycle, answer that, and I'll have to move us on.
Okay. It's around 16% at the moment. That's NAB's research figures. So we are foreseeing that once the lightweight cement factories go up, they will substantially grow it very quickly to the bigger volumes. So we've kind of reached a peak with the picture frame decor industry, and that's where we're really putting a lot of emphasis on the cement factories.
Okay, great. Thank you, Audrey, for effectively answering those questions, and very quickly and very well. There are more questions in the chat. So what we will do, if we don't get to them at the Q&A at the end, we will then send them to our speakers and then send the responses out when we send the recording to this meeting.
Awesome.
Thank you, Audrey. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay. Now I would like to introduce our colleagues from DFF. I think, Dumi, I'll introduce all three of you at the same time and then allow you to run with the presentation, if that works.
That's okay.
Okay. You're welcome to share your screen if you with your presentation. So I'm going to introduce Dumisani Buthelezi, who's the Director for General Waste Minimization within the Departments of Environment, Forestry and Fisheries. So Dumisani has had a range of roles within DFF, which was previously called a number of other things, and has also had a role in the Department of Trade and Industry, where he worked under the Standards and Environment section, and then also the Green Industry Sector Desk at the DTI. So Dumi, really appreciate your experience focusing on industry and then coming back to the waste and environment space. And he's also served as a specialist for SMME support under the waste minimization business area until late 2016. So thank you so much, Dumi. It's really good to have you here. And sorry, I'm chopping our bios short so that we can get to
no, that's okay. It's actually a bio that I did for another workshop. So when you requested, I was busy with something else, and then I just forwarded that one. But I'm happy if it makes sense. And thank you for that, Kirsten.
Okay, thanks.
Maybe let me greet everyone again. And say, even those who might be in quarantine, we are with you. Those who might have lost a close friend or a family member, we are with you in prayers. I think the issue of COVID-19 is hitting hard at home now. We know more of people that are closer to us than it was 3 months, 4 months ago. And we like to say to the late Zinzi Mandela, may her soul rest in peace. She's being buried today. And then coming to the business of the day, then thank you for this opportunity, colleagues. I need to apologize for my colleagues, Mamohala Museken and Khauta Mokwena, because since the minister signed the notice and the regulations for comments. We all over. We have a lot of discussions with a lot of stakeholders in the country. And on Monday, I need to indicate that we have a broader industry consultation, paper and packaging industry consultation, and you are welcome to also join there. We will share the link for that meeting on Monday. So, in fact, on Monday, we'll also try and invite the colleagues that will be presenting the lighting and the notice and notice. Yes, notice is it's two-way streams, by the way. So the presentation today, I was asked to provide a background or just an overview of what the department thinks needs to be a best way to approach circular economy, but then within the context of using EPR in the plastics waste sector. So we'll share our policy aspirations as the department, and then later on my colleagues will provide you with the just a description of what you have already, the notice and the regulations, but they'll talk more about each section. Then we'll allow for, we'll provide questions at a later stage. So colleagues, in the context of waste, or rather circular economy, I always start by saying the reality of our economy in the country is that we are consumption-driven economy. The financialization sector seems to be the one that is always stabilized. The manufacturing sector, it's not growing. And we've been trying to do that for years. It's really struggling. So the economy, it's mostly import intensity, and there's also issues around structural unemployment. You'll forgive me about the figures there. I'm sure they've changed. We are at around 29 or 30% of unemployment rate in the country. So now we are seeing circular economy as a stepping stone, or rather an opportunity for our country to say, given the structural challenges in the economy, perhaps the circular economy could give us that control to sort of start afresh and build what is our own. And when I was with the DTI, would be asked to do sector analysis for main industry sectors, and what we look at would be the availability of resources, labor and infrastructure, and many other items. So in the context of circular economy, especially within the waste context and plastics, when you look at what is available in the landfill sites, this picture shows an example of the reality of what is happening in our landfill sites. We also have pictures like this in many parts of the country, where illegal dumping and littering, it's just that has just become a norm of the day. We've therefore helped bring in place programs such as the Good Green Deeds initiatives to sort of create awareness, but to also empower communities to help us deal with such problems. But the problem, it's very huge. It needs participation of all stakeholders. And of late, there's a concern around the issue of plastic marine pollution. The discussions around plastics and plastic waste and their impact on the marine environment have taken a priority, a policy discussion in many countries. So that is why the department is trying by all means to form partnerships with a lot of organizations that are really trying to look at solutions on how we could address the plastic problems. We have a partnership with WWF. we are also sitting on a number of forums in the Basel Convention. Some of you would know that the Basel Convention has introduced the plastic discussion in the past 2 years through Norway, and we're sitting on that. We support some of the motions that are tabled there, but we also have other structures in the African, in the SADC region that we support. We also work with UNEP very closely to try and address these problems. So the slide here indicates we are just trying to show you the nature of the problem, that given population growth and economic activities, urbanization, we are likely to have problems going forward with regards to waste. In low income countries, plastics will always be a problem, and there's an indication that if we do not come up with strategies now, we might face a challenge where a lot of this waste becomes mixed much more than it is now, and then we will lose an opportunity to separate and add value on some of this plastic waste in this context. Everyone knows this popular slide. It basically reflects the consumption of plastic products and what goes into recycling. It's really minimal in many parts of the world. So our study, there was a study undertaken by DIA in 2017. It reflected that packaging constitutes, I think, 51% of the waste that gets generated. I stand to be corrected there, because the report we had to take it to and from with the plastics SA. But there was, the message here was that there's a lot of packaging material that it's not diverted away from the landfill sites. It ends on illegal dumps, it ends on our rivers and into the ocean, and it gets into the landfill sites. And there's also a trend where we've seen in South Africa that especially by the time China opened, had still opened the borders to accept a lot of plastic. So we had a lot of Chinese guys going into our landfill site, buying a lot of plastics from the waste pickers and from the landfill sites. So in that way, we realize that this is a missed opportunity, because potential materials to go into the landfill sites and to leave our borders to assist other countries to develop, yet we have a mandate to facilitate the circular economy, especially when it comes to waste. We therefore said there is an opportunity and space for us if we work together with all sectors in the industry, where we would then be given an opportunity to look at what innovation is out there. We also need to explore industrial development opportunities where we could say waste could assist in terms of employment creation. So the economic rationale basically for waste recycling, and maybe plastics applies here as well, is that it is an economic sector that is growing very fast, and it's supplying a lot of raw materials, and it has a potential to supply raw materials even in this country, and it has a potential to promote industrial resource efficiency and competitiveness in the manufacturing sector. And it has the potential to promote SMME development and creation and employment creation opportunities. Those are the main three categories where we see the value of the waste economy, or a circular economy within the space of waste in the country. So I'm sure a lot of you know this slide. Again, it's mainly about transitioning from a linear system that we see now to more circular economy, where the resources are diverted away from the landfill sites, and there's pure separation at source and captured, and then there's value addition, so that they can go back and be used for something else. That is basically what we want to do. And you'll agree that in every country, a political mandate, it's quite critical to economic transformation or to economic development. So in South Africa, we're fortunate because the National Development Plan, it's quite clear that waste is one of the sectors that we need to explore and develop and try to make sure that it becomes one of the main economic sectors. And that applies to plastic waste colleagues. So now, fortunately, again, there needs to be an understanding that we are dealing here with an environmental issue, but an economic issue as well, with a potential for innovation. Now, when you look at the National Waste Management Strategy, it is clear on what needs to do with regards to the waste hierarchy. Then next to that, you have the DTI that drives the Industrial Policy Action Plan. The DTI has got a clear focus and a mandate to develop the plastics sector. Perhaps what we need to do as the stakeholders is to influence the adoption of the secondary materials economy approach through the master plan process that would be captured into the Industrial Policy Action Plan. But then when you look at the IPAP itself, it's clear that it's no longer the conventional thinking about developing the plastic sector, but it's also about inviting new innovation, especially within the secondary materials economy sector, because we believe that is where that is one of the ways that we could kickstart our transition to a circular economy. Then many of you would know the document from Science and Technology, which links up with the two. It talks about innovation, and the waste roadmap, it's quite clear on innovation, R&D transition or trajectory areas that we need to follow to ensure that the country responds better in the next few years when it comes to a circular economy. When you look at this slide, it reflects the linear approach in the production of plastic products. But we are saying this linear approach leads to this, the accumulation of this material either in the landfill sites or it's captured somewhere with no use. And then the approach that we are pushing, it's that of diverting plastics from the landfill site to add value, as it's reflected on the slide here. So there's internationally, and fortunately for us as policy people, we've had a chance to interact with this document, and a lot of materials from the Alan MacArthur Foundation. There's a nice piece that talks about the circular economy within the context of plastics. It's a very, very, very nice piece of work to read. So we believe that there are many lessons that we could learn from this and try and adapt them to our policy thinking in the country when we are trying to deal with plastics. Now, there's a lot of debates when it comes to plastics. We've been pushed sideways by many stakeholders. Some would want us to ban some plastic products, and some are saying we're not ready to ban. It's quite an interesting when you are in a policy space, because it's more like you're in a whirlwind where someone comes in and say we are not ready. Someone comes in and say please put an end to these types of plastics. But then from that engagement, we've learned that it's really important to invite views from different sectors of the societies, more especially with the strong participation from the plastic sector, to tell us on whether we are ready or what. We have engaged with a lot of people in the sector, and we know the thinking from some of the people. But when it comes to policy, we obviously have to consult, just like we are consulting now on EPR. And I believe that all those debates around banning and what have you would be captured well under the EPR system, because it seems like everyone now is focusing on the EPR, and the noise it's a bit low now about banning and other measures. So we're hoping for the best going forward. So some of the needs in investment needs in the plastic recycling sector affected by some of these issues here. It's price fluctuations, virgin and waste material, uncertainty on waste on markets for secondary materials, recycling policies. For example, there's no clear or mandatory policy on separation at source. So one statement from one of the notable researchers within the waste space is that it is generally accepted that recycling itself the value to the national economy. The challenge is how to make it viable given the nature of the economics of recycling and the globalized nature of the market. So here, this statement introduces, rather sets a challenge to say we want to move towards a circular economy, but these are the challenges. We really need to find policy solutions to deal with these challenges, especially when it comes to recycling, because some people are saying it would make no sense to talk about circular economy, whereas you still have challenges with regards to recycling. It will really make no sense. But we're saying there are opportunities for innovation, and then we need to explore technologies, and then we need to have clear policies. We need to deal with the issue of supply side, demand side, and we believe that all those issues could be addressed under Section 18 of the Waste Act. That's the EPR basically. So I'll go through what we have done so far. You'll remember that, colleagues, in 2017, the then minister issued a call for industry to submit industry waste management plans. Now, industry waste management plans are under Section 28 of the Waste Act, but later in 2019, the plans had to be cancelled, and some of the reasons were for the withdrawal was that none of the plans that we received complied with the criteria, all the criteria, and therefore there was a suggestion for a new approach, which is Section 18. Now that is where we are now. So the minister met with the industry role players, paper and packaging, electrical, and lighting industry sector. And there was a fair agreement that we are all pursuing Section 18. In fact, a lot of industry colleagues were strong on Section 18, even by the time we were doing Section 28. So when the new minister came into power, I'm sure many of them, many of you in the industry are really praising the current minister because she's the one who really pushed for Section 18, and she's very strong on that. And that is basically how we started the work on section 18 to this far. So I won't talk much about the progress, but we are on consultations now. We've published the notice and the draft regulations. We want an input now from the public, and right now we are consulting widely in the sector, and we are also waiting for written comments from the sector as well. So whilst we're waiting for written comments, we go and talk to people, and then what we've put in the notice and the regulations, it's not cast in stone. So I would like to request that people should not take it as if it's now government has now agreed on this, so we do not have a say. No, rather please take it as a way to kickstart a debate, to kickstart a discussion on what needs to happen. A lot of people have issues around the targets. We understand the targets and the time frames, and there's also issues around waste pickers. So I know that some questions will arise in relation to that and the relationship with municipalities as well. I think I need to leave it here now and allow Mulalo to share his slide on the notice, the section 18 notice.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dumisani, for giving us an overview of the stimulus towards EPR that our Department of Environment, Forestry and Fisheries has seen, and then your action on that. And we do commend the Minister and your department for the action on EPR. And thank you for encouraging all of us to comment. So please do send your comments. As communicated, we will be sending in comments through the SA Plastics Pact Secretariat, and I will send those comments around, and you're welcome to add your comments and your organization to those comments. Please also note, for example, our PROs are also collating comments, so you're welcome to send that. Just make sure you do comment. I'm going to briefly introduce Mulalo and Rishal. Mulalo and Rishal, I'm sorry, I'm going to ask you to do a quick overview in 2 minutes of the regulations and then the notice. Or the specific for the paper and packaging. And then Dumisani has offered that we could send a link to our members. There is a consultation by DEFF on Monday, 10 till 12, and I'm sorry for the late notice, but 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. specifically on paper and packaging. So we could get more of the details there. I'd love to have 5 minutes or so at the end. So very briefly, Mulalo Chikochi and Rishal Suklal. Mulalo started working in the Department of Environment, Forestry and Fisheries, formerly known as DEER, in 2008 in the Ocean and Coast branch, and has worked in the development of various legislations, policies and projects to manage and mitigate ocean and coastal pollution. Mulalo joined the Chemical and Waste Management branch in October 2019 to provide technical support in identifying the relevant policy and regulatory interventions to promote the sound management of general waste streams to achieve waste minimization. Rishal Suklal is currently employed as an environmental control officer, general waste minimization at DEFF since 2014. Rishal is involved in the development and implementation of general waste management instruments, processing of general waste import-export applications, waste tire export applications, waste tire abatement plans, processing and evaluation, general waste exclusion applications, the development of a food waste minimization and management guideline with the CSRR, a waste tariff model training for municipal officials, and waste recycling guideline implementation at DEFF and other government institutions. So thank you, Rishal. You certainly have a lot of work on your plate. So Mulalo and Rishal, I'd like to hand over to you.
Thank you, Kirsten, for the opportunity. I must say that the presentation that that were presented previously, they are very much informative, and it gives a background and also the importance of the EPR. So I'm just going to go straight to the notice. I'm hoping that everyone has got the document. So I'm just gonna be very quick in the notice. The notice contains definitions. It contains paper and packagings and other single-use products. Those are subcategories. And also the targets that talks about product composition, collection, reuse, and recycling. In terms of definition, we have defined the brand owner, extended provincial responsibility, importer, packaging, paper, producer, product responsibility organization, the act, as well as the regulation. So the purpose of the notice is for the producers or class of producers to set procedures and processes, and also invest in implementing the EPR measures. They should look at collections, reuse, recycling, energy recovery, and disposal of their product in the post-consumer stage. In the scope of the notice, we covered paper and packaging materials, plastic packaging, biodegradable and compostable plastic packaging, single-use products, single-use compostable plastic products, single-use biodegradable products, glass packaging, as well as metal packaging containers. I'm not going to read everything. This is just subcategories of paper and packaging under the notice. Also here is the subcategories under the plastic packaging products. We also have the biodegradable compostable packaging, where it is required that the compostable raw material should be must comply with relevant SABS and or ISO standard. Single-use plastic products are also included. The subcategories are stated in the slide here, which include film and flexible, which such as shopping bags, agricultural mass films, and garbage bags, and so forth. We also have single-use compostable plastic products that's quite similar from the single-use plastic product, and single-use biodegradable plastic products, which are including the biodegradable films, biodegradable injection molded products, biodegradable blow molded products, and extruded product and compostable products. Under glass packaging, we've got bottles and jars, and under metals, we've got steel, tin plate, and aluminium. The notice stipulate targets. The targets for 5 years that focus on the recycled content, reuse, collection, and recycling target. You will notice that some of the things might not have a target on it, but through or maybe there's the need for amendment. So we believe that through consultation with sectors who are more experienced in this, then we will be able to achieve or set appropriate targets. So we do have gaps that we believe that at the end of consultation that will be we will reach solution. We've got in terms of targets, single-use biodegradable plastic products, single-use compostable products, and many others. Those are the things that we believe there are still a gap that needs to be addressed, and we're hoping that through collective effort with sectors, we'll be able to rectify and have a proper targets in place. By that, I say this is my last slide, and Rachel will continue with the regulations.
Thank you very much, Malala. Thank you, Rachel.
Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Kirsten. With 2 minutes on the clock, I'm going to literally fly through. Mulalo, can you perhaps just stop sharing your screen so I can share mine? Thank you. Okay. Skip this. Okay, can everybody see that? Okay, brilliant. Yes, good afternoon, colleagues. I'm going to quickly run through the EPR, proposed EPR regulations that were gazetted on the 26th of June. Essentially, the contents of this presentation will just run through what's contained in the EPR regulations as a quick overview. I'm going to touch on what are the producer registration requirements, EPR measures, the minimum requirements and criteria for EPR schemes, financial arrangements, the monitoring, reporting, evaluation, and the obligations of the PROs, and what are the next steps going forward. In terms of registration, existing producers are required to register within 6 months of the publication of the notice, and with new producers, they are required to register within 3 months, and within 30 days, registration will be done by DEF of the new and existing producers. Some of the measures that is required from producers in terms of the EPR include the establishment and implementation of an EPR scheme or joined to another scheme, finance the extended producer responsibility scheme, conducting internal audits and making these audit reports available to the department upon request, and appointing an independent financial auditor to audit financial matters linked to the EPR scheme. Also to tendering and contracting for the collection, recycling, and recovery of waste, the documentation of collection, sorting, recycling, recovery of waste, the promotion of small businesses, to develop a BBBE transformation charter within the waste sector of the products identified in the notice within a year of publishing of the notice, and this charter must comply with Section 9.1 of the BBBE Act of the regulations. And also to implement transformation within all levels of the value chain, including transformation targets with BBBE charter frames. This is just a quick overview of the measures. They are, I think, an A to X measures in the actual notice. The minimum requirements for EPR regulation in terms of extended producer responsibility schemes must as a minimum include the design for recyclability and minimization of waste reduction, including composition or volume of products or weight of products to be restricted and reduced with associated timeframes, the reuse, recycling, and recovery options, to comply with the requirements for programs planned to contribute to government priorities, including but not limited to decent work creation, social cohesion, inclusive economic growth, and improved quality of life. The financial requirements in terms of the EPR schemes, the producers must determine the EPR's fee in consultation with the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition. The fee must be based on a differentiated rate per item category, dependent on weight and recyclability of each product or item, and must be paid by producers or the obligated industry to fund the EPR scheme. Producers must also submit a financial plan and a budget for the duration of the registration, in which inter alia the following information is mentioned: estimated revenue from the various product streams, the way in which the contributions shall be calculated and assessed, then see the conditions and procedures for revising and the contributions to reflect changes in the obligations incumbent on the registered producer under this regulation, the methods for allocating revenue for operating the extended producer responsibility scheme amongst collection, waste minimization, recycling, and waste reuse. The admin fee of the product responsibility organization must not exceed 6% of the revenue collected. In terms of the requirements for monitoring, evaluation, and reporting, producers must submit a mid-year report on the performance of the scheme measured against the individual targets agreed upon, and this mid-year report must be submitted to the department within 2 weeks of the conclusion of the 6 months. The annual performance reports must be submitted to the department within 3 months of the conclusion of the year end, which is 31 December, so by the following year, March. Obligations for PROs.
Sorry, Rochelle, we've reached the end of our meeting time.
Okay.
How many slides do you have?
That was my last slide. So basically, the obligations for the EPROs are, in essence, be responsible for the management and implementation of the EPR scheme on behalf of its producers with the minimum requirements there. Developing, maintaining a system for the EPR fees, and appointing an independent financial auditor. So the next steps, submission of comments to the department by 27 July through to Mr. Andampile at that email address, and the consideration of comments will be done, and the revised notice and regulations will be done in August of 2020, next month. We're hoping with the publication for implementation in September. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Rochelle. Apologies, you got the roughest end of the stick being our last presenter. So thank you very much for that. We've had a number of questions in the chat. Unfortunately, we can't sort of address them on air, but we will ask our presenters to answer these questions, and we will get back to you on those. For example, we've had questions about the intersection of the WWF IUCN project with DFF and the current regulations that we're being asked to comment on, the scope and role of the Waste Bureau, the definitions, for example, the definitions that as Plastics Pact we work with in terms of how we approach plastics and design our way forward, talking about the yield in terms of recycling, and the reasoning behind that supports the targets that have been proposed. And I think, Linka, this is where we can have a lot of say and be able to look at the data from our own industry and therefore back up the presentation of certain targets. And then Michelle about the responsibilities of the municipalities, and a further comment in terms of the framework and the EPR regs. So thank you, we will address those. Thank you so much for your attention and your time all and your active engagement. We have noted all of them, and Linka, thank you. I see your last question also about clarity on what a producer is. So thank you. As you can see from all our presentations, this is a complicated system in which we are all working together as very different stakeholders to consider how we can effectively manage the materials that we produce and use. And I love the emphasis that we all have responsibility in this system. And part of that responsibility is to engage and to ask these questions. Your question might trigger a further discussion and development. And I'm sorry we don't have time for that good discussion. These discussions will continue in many of our action groups. Some of the action group interventions will have impact, for example, on what that means for our EPR system or the effectiveness of an EPR system. So please do join those and engage. And thank you so much to all your speakers. I will send you a coffee voucher to say thank you. We really, really do appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kirsten.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jimmy. Thanks,
Oh, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone involved. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.